The Sanctuary in Montana. My name is Arthur. After spending 37 exhausting years working as a senior civil structural engineer in Chicago, I finally hung up my hard hat. I had spent nearly 4 decades building high-rises and bridges for other people while sacrificing my own peace of mind. With my lifelong savings and the proceeds from selling my city suburban house, I fulfilled a lifelong dream. I bought 9 acres of secluded, pristine land in Montana, complete with a beautifully restored wooden ranch house, a workshop, and sweeping views of the Rocky Mountains. My son, David, was 32 and married to Brenda. I had paid for David's college tuition in full and even helped them with a generous down payment on their townhome in Denver. I expected nothing in return except to enjoy my hard-earned retirement in quiet solitude. For the first 6 months, life was peaceful. I spent my days woodworking, hiking with my rescue dog, Barnaby, and breathing in the fresh mountain air. But that peace was shattered on a cold Tuesday morning in October. The audacious demand. My phone rang while I was sitting on the porch with a fresh cup of coffee. It was my daughter-in-law, Brenda. "Arthur, I'm so glad I caught you," she began, skipping any pleasantries. Her tone wasn't polite, it was commanding. "I have great news. My parents, Richard and Vanessa, just sold their condo in Florida. They've decided to move to Montana next month." I paused, confused. "To Montana? Well, that's fine. Are they looking at properties around Bozeman?" Brenda let out a sharp, condescending laugh. "Oh, Arthur, don't be silly. Why would they spend money buying a place when you have 9 whole acres and a 5-bedroom house all to yourself? At your age, that's way too much land and space for one person to handle. It's practically going to waste." I sat frozen, holding the phone. "Brenda, this is my retirement home. I built my life here." "Arthur, listen to reason," she interrupted sharply. "They're moving in on the 1st of next month. They've already put their stuff in a moving truck. My dad is taking the master suite upstairs because his knees hurt, and my mom wants the south-facing guest room for her art studio. You can move into the small cabin bedroom in the back. David agrees it's the most sensible thing for the family." She didn't ask. She informed me. She assumed that an old man in his 60s would simply roll over, surrender his home, and become a tenant on his own property. Part 3. The quiet preparation. When I called my son David later that afternoon, he sounded embarrassed but spineless. "Dad, come on. Brenda's parents had financial trouble in Florida. It's just until they get on their feet. Plus, Brenda is really pushing for this. Can't you just share the place?" I realized then that arguing would accomplish nothing. Brenda felt entitled to my hard work, and David was too weak to stand up to her. Instead of shouting, making empty threats, or begging them to reconsider, I simply said, "Okay, David. Tell them to come." For the next 3 weeks, I didn't complain. I quietly prepared one thing. As a former structural engineer, I knew the law, real estate contracts, and property rights inside out. I hired a top-tier asset protection attorney in Helena. First, I transferred the entire 9-acre property into an irrevocable family trust, strictly naming a National Environmental Conservation Foundation as the sole beneficiary upon my passing, completely writing David and Brenda out of any future inheritance of the land. Second, I had my attorney draft a formal, legally binding lease and property management agreement. Third, I spent 2 weeks installing a high-tech security gate at the front entrance of the property, equipped with biometric locks, security cameras, and automated perimeter fencing. The arrival and the revelation. On the afternoon of November 1st, a large moving truck followed by a luxury SUV pulled up to the security gate of my property. Brenda, David, and her parents, Richard and Vanessa, stepped out of the vehicles. Richard was wearing a designer coat, looking at the mountain views as if he already owned the estate. "Look at this place," Richard boasted loudly. "A bit unkempt, but I'll have Arthur clear those trees near the eastern boundary next week." They approached the front porch, where I was sitting calmly in a rocking chair, holding a thick legal binder. "Arthur," Brenda called out triumphantly, "open the door. My parents are exhausted from the drive. Richard wants to inspect his master bedroom." I didn't stand up. I took a slow sip of my coffee and looked at them. "You're not going inside," I said quietly. Brenda's smile vanished. What are you talking about? We discussed this. My parents are moving in today. We never agreed to anything, Brenda, I replied, opening the leather binder. You announced an invasion, but since you brought your family here, I have prepared everything for you. I pulled out the legal documents and held them up. This is a commercial lease agreement, I announced firmly. If your parents wish to set foot on my land, Richard must sign this right now. The terms are simple. Monthly rent, $4,500 per month, due on the 1st. Security deposit, $10,000 up front. Property rights. Non-exclusive access restricted strictly to the small one-bedroom guest house at the back of the property. The main house, workshop, and garage remain strictly off-limits. Maintenance fee, $500 monthly for snowplowing and lawn care. Part 5. The Fallout. Richard's face turned bright red. Are you out of your mind? We sold our condo. We came here expecting to live in the main house for free. Then you made a catastrophic financial mistake based on your daughter's arrogance, I said smoothly. Brenda screamed at me, her face contorted in rage. Arthur, you selfish old man. How dare you do this to my family? David, say something to your father. David stepped forward, sweating. Dad, please, they sold their place. They have nowhere to go. Then they can check into a hotel in town, I replied coldly, staring directly at my son. 37 years I worked to buy my peace. You didn't pay a single dime for this soil. You don't dictate who lives under my roof. We'll sue you, Richard yelled, stepping toward the porch stairs. Before he could take 2 steps, I pressed a button on my key fob. The automated security gate behind them slowly swung shut, locking them on the outer driveway, while the security system beeped loudly, recording every frame in high definition. You are currently trespassing on private property owned by an irrevocable trust, I said calmly. If that moving truck isn't off my driveway in 5 minutes, the sheriff's department will impound it. Part 6. The Final Boundary. Realizing I wasn't bluffing, panic set in. Richard and Vanessa scrambled back into their SUV, arguing fiercely with Brenda on the driveway. David stood there looking utterly defeated, realizing his wife's entitlement had burned the last bridge with his father. Within 10 minutes, the moving truck backed out, and the luxury SUV sped away toward the highway, heading for a costly stay at a Bozeman hotel. A week later, David called me alone, crying. Brenda's parents had to rent an expensive 2-bedroom apartment in town, draining what remained of their savings. The embarrassment had strained David and Brenda's marriage to the breaking point. He apologized profusely for letting his wife disrespect me. I forgave my son, but I made one thing abundantly clear. My love for him was free, but my home, my peace, and my dignity were not for sale. Now, as winter sets in over Montana, I sit on my porch with Barnaby by my side, watching the snow fall over my 9 acres of absolute quiet. I built my life with my own hands, and no one will ever take it away from me. The downfall of entitlement. 3 months passed. The harsh Montana winter had set in full force, burying the landscape in feet of heavy snow. In town, Brenda's parents were spiraling. The expensive temporary rental was draining what little cash they had left after selling their Florida condo. Richard, used to a comfortable life, tried to find local consulting work, but at his age and with no connections in Montana, nobody was hiring. Brenda's obsession with controlling my life had completely turned on her. Furious that her plan had failed, she blamed David for not standing up to his father. The daily stress and financial drain shattered their marriage. David finally woke up to her entitlement and filed for divorce, packing his bags and moving into a small apartment near his job in Denver. Without David's income to support her lifestyle, Brenda was forced to move in with her parents in their cramped 2-bedroom rental, experiencing the very reality she had tried to force onto me. Part 8. The Legacy of Peace. One quiet morning in early spring, as the snow began to melt off the mountain peaks, David drove up to the ranch alone. He brought a box of his old childhood belongings in a humble, sincere heart. We sat on the porch, just as we used to years ago. Dad, David said quietly, looking out over the valley. I spent years letting Brenda make decisions for me because I thought it was easier than fighting. Standing on your driveway that day, watching you protect what you built, it made me realize how much of my own life I had given away. Building a life takes sweat and backbone, David, I replied, handing him a cup of coffee. Respect isn't something people owe you, it's something you command by setting boundaries. David began visiting every few weeks, helping me cut firewood and restore old furniture in the workshop. He slowly rebuilt his own life with independence and dignity. As for the 9 acres, my irrevocable trust remains untouched. The land will forever stay pristine, protected from greedy developer hands or entitled family demands. I set out to buy a piece of Montana for my retirement, but in the end, I bought something far more valuable: absolute peace of mind.